for those gamers with short attention spans out there, if you want to just know what I think about the J-8, it's pretty good, but the J-7E is better. And if you have the J-7E, which you do, considering you have the J-8, there's really no reason, in my opinion, to play the J-8 over the J-7 from a competitive standpoint. Now, obviously, you might find one more fun, and that's completely up to you. If you prefer one over the other, fine. But I just personally would not play the J-8 over the J-7. And there you go. You can click off the video right now if you want, but if you want to actually watch some entertaining gameplay, then stick around. I've got some decent games for you to watch here. Real quick, this is the only game where I'm using those Fox 1 missiles that the J-8 gets access to. They are the exact same missiles on the new Italian F-104. They're pretty good. They don't have any kind of dogfight mode. They take a really long time to begin tracking off of the rail. You saw in that opening clip, I fired with a pretty healthy amount of distance between me and my first target there, and it barely made it to the target. It does have 35 Gs of pull, and it does pull pretty hard. Does it pull 35 Gs? I don't really know. I didn't use them enough to really get the feel for it, but I'd say that they pull pretty damn hard, and they have tracked pretty well. They're very fast. Overall, a pretty deadly missile. Now, I don't use these, and I didn't really get much practice with them just because I think this is the worst of the two loadouts on the J-8. I definitely recommend taking the 4 PLs over these. I'm not even going to try. You guys heard me pronounce it in the last video. We'll just go with that. The Italian semi-active radar homing missiles. I think that the PL5s just offer more versatility and endurance. Having just 2 missiles and then a GSH-23 is not the most ideal loadout in top tier, but if you do have your heart set on using radar missiles, then they are going to get the job done. Stock, this plane comes with some pretty ugly decals all over it, so I went ahead and I just fixed that for you guys so you didn't have to stare at that on the screen the entire time, and instead you could see some beautiful red, white, and blue. Flight performance wise, this plane is... it's interesting, I guess. It's really just kind of a mig21 bis in the feel and in terms of how you fly it. You know, you've got the same delta wing as far as I know as the mig21s, the same tailerons really, and really just all around almost the same flight performance as the 21 bis, just kind of a side grade really. If you want to think of it in simple terms, it's a 21 bis with PL5s, and if you like the 21 bis and you like PL5s, then you're going to enjoy this plane. It does have really strong AOA. It can point that nose wherever it wants. The engines are extremely powerful, so if you want, you can pull some really hard AOA. You can go into verticals, and while it's not a very good sustained dogfighter by any means, as none of the Deltas are, it can just sit on its engines, point its nose, try to get a gunshot in. You're going to need to practice with the guns a little bit, but it's something that you can do. It's got pretty decent top speed on the deck. It's nothing to write home about, but it'll get the job done, but it really shines at altitude. The engines just push this plane up at altitude, similar to, you know, the mig21 bis, the Fear C7. It's nowhere near as fast as the Fear C7, as most things aren't, but it does go really fast. And I did say in the dev server preview that I did on this plane, in the description if you read that I would probably be playing this plane like I do the Fear C7. And once it came out, once I got access to the plane on the live server, I did exactly that, and honestly, yeah, it's probably the way I would recommend to play the plane. If you want to be more aggressive, you want to be at altitude, or you want to be at low altitude, turn and burn, fine, but I think you're going to get the best results if you try to stay at altitude, lob these PL5s from absolute outer space, and orbital strike people that had no idea that they were coming. The spotting system is going to work in your favor if you're coming from above people, directly above people that is, because they're going to have to point their camera right up at you in order to see you, and not everybody does that. On top of that, the PL5 still has absolutely cracked range and a very short burn time to go with it, so you can get that missile out there, the motor's going to burn, the marker's going to go away. A lot of times people aren't even going to be able to catch the marker in time, and yet they're still going to die to it, and seemingly were never even warned that it was coming. You can see me diving right on top of these guys that are following this F5C here. They have no idea I'm here. I'm going to launch my PLs. The PL5s do have insane range, but as Define said, most of you probably watch him if you watch me, they're pretty much like a Minecraft bow and arrow, and I really like that analogy. I also have heard, you know, darts, unguided rockets, you name it. Basically, the missile does not like to pull. It's a stat card of 20 Gs, I believe it says. Yeah, that doesn't mean it's going to pull like, other 20G missiles like a 9J, for example, or an R13, simply because it's going way too fast for its own good. The missile is still bugged. I don't know when it's going to get fixed, but basically it's going so fast that it pulls its 20Gs in such little degrees per second that it barely pulls at all. So you're going to have to aim these things and really lead them just kind of with the thought that they're not going to be tracking and pulling really hard. You kind of just got to shoot them like they're unguided, give it lead, and just let them fly straight to their target. Now, they will move a little bit, left, right, up, down, whatever. It'll only be a little bit though, so keep that in mind. Once the motor burns out and it starts to lose speed a little bit, it's going to become a little more maneuverable, but still, it's going to be retaining energy quite well. It's going to be going really fast. Another thing about the PL5s is they seem to be very flare happy. It's not too hard to flare these things, but it's not too hard to flare anything anymore, let's be honest. It's just, it seems like compared to some of the Western counterparts, AIM-9Js, AIM-9Gs, even the AIM-9L, the PL5 is a little bit easy to flare. They're usually not too effective at close range just because they don't like pulling because they're going so fast, but if somebody's just going to fly in a straight line at close range, they usually don't have time to react because the missile's so fast and they just can't hit their flare key in time. Speaking of not having time to react, I really shouldn't have done that. I went into that crowd of two, I guess, it was a mig21 and something else. The right play there would have been to peel off, pick some speed back up, but instead I tried to do a head-on with not enough energy. I stayed in the head-on too long, and obviously I died for it. Number one, I shouldn't have even taken that head-on just because I was going way too slow. I shouldn't have even started flying toward those guys. I should have flew away and picked some speed back up, but even considering I did fly towards them, I should not have stayed in that head-on for so long. So let that be a lesson to everyone out there who likes doing full commit head-ons. You're going to see pretty much in every single one of these games that I'm going to be starting at altitude. I'm going to try to dive directly down at somebody. I'm going to try to get a lock with these PLs, give it some lead, and just let the missile do the work where I can. However, if the mig21 is going to kind of stall himself out right in front of me, absolutely I'm going to take the gunshot, and that's what I'm able to do right there. While ideally, I'm coming from altitude and let my missiles do the work, if it's mid-game, late game even, sometimes I'll just come down and be a little more aggressive. You still have acceleration similar, if I didn't test exactly, but I know it's similar to the mig21 bis, so that's a huge plus for getting yourself out of trouble. And with the kind of AOA you can be pulling in this plane, you can do a couple of power turns, see if you can't get your nose on somebody and give them a little burst of 23mm. And like I said, the engines will get you out of there if you get yourself too slow. Just put it in a straight line. That is, of course, assuming that you put yourself into a turn fight that there's really nobody else around. Don't ever get into a turn fight, just even for a couple of turns at top tier, if you're within, say, 10 kilometers of another enemy. The closure that can happen in that 10 kilometers is insane, and they can be right up on you in the matter of seconds. You think you're 1v1, and then you're not, and then you're dead. That's pretty much all I'm going to say about the plane. I'm just going to start talking about the gameplay now. I had a couple of good shots there. That's not how I usually aim the GSH-23. I still dislike the gun strongly for top tier. I find it pretty difficult to aim compared to other top tier guns, but when it works, it works. And while that's not my usual aim with the GSH-23, I'm certainly not going to complain about it. And if you hit somebody with this gun, they're usually going to die. Maybe one crit once in a while, but most of the time one shot kills, which is always nice, especially compared to other guns. There's a Mirage F1C in front of me. God bless his soul for trying, but it is a Mirage F1C. He's in the clouds though, so my missile seeker just isn't going to see him. Not that it should be able to, but I will say I am pretty unhappy with the way missile seekers and clouds interact with each other in this game. There's, well, I don't know if they're bugs, but I'm just not happy with the way they work. Anyways, I tried pulling a leading turn, see if I could get my guns on him before he's out of range, or at the very least have a missile shot, but my teammates clean him up, and that's the end of that game. Once again, starting at very high altitude, I'm going to try to build up my speed before I see anybody, so I'm kind of slowly turning in here as to not just dump all of my energy in one turn. But I see this missile getting launched at me, and that happens a lot. Whenever you climb up at altitude, you're going to get sparrow spammed. You're just going to have to 90 chaff it, pre-chaff it, do whatever you have to do, but defeat the missile, and then usually these monkeys either sit on your 6 the entire game or completely forget about you. And either way, it sucks to be them in either of those situations, because if you completely forget about the target, then you turn into this F5E over here who's trying to fly away, or dogfight my teammate or something, he eats the PL5. This F4E is climbing up trying to missile my teammate, he eats the PL5, and then there's this EJ Kai who didn't forget about me but instead just sat on my 6 the entire time, and now there's teammates coming in, which is going to be a problem for him because now he's got to look at somebody else, he's not looking at me anymore, and yep, you guessed it, he eats the PL5. If there's one thing to master at top tier, and I use the word master, you're never going to, but try to get used to just looking around constantly, and I mean constantly. Between everything that you do, you should be holding C and moving your mouse around in between your actions, whether it be queuing up a missile and waiting to launch it, or switching targets, repositioning, you name it, switching a radar lock, firing off a radar missile. In between any action you do at top tier, check your 6. You should be checking your 6 in really 360 degrees all around you every 10 seconds, if not more. And it's ridiculous to say, but that's just the way the spotting system works. And on top of that, that's just the way missile combat works, as you saw with all 3 of those guys who just took their eyes off me for the matter of seconds and ended up getting a PL5 up their ass. You're always going to die to failing to check around and make sure you're not getting somebody just randomly appearing 3 kilometers. You're always going to be dying to that. But what I'm saying is at least try to make it happen less often. Most of my deaths are me failing to be situationally aware, even though maintaining situational awareness is very hard in top tier with the spotting system, with the missile markers, whatever it may be, broken radars, broken RWRs, 30 kilometer range rendering. Either way, you have to be able to do it to not die in the current state of top tier. I've made my way back to the last 3 remaining players. The F4J I picked out, who was all alone, unfortunately goes down before I can reach him. That still does leave 2 F4Js left, but they've got quite the swarm of my teammates around. Thankfully for me, this guy just kind of gives himself my 6. Had I had PL5s right now, it would have been a very nice, juicy target. Unfortunately, I do not, so I'm just going to have to close the distance, go for a gunshot. I'm keeping an eye, this is what I was just talking about. In between me flying from where I am now and getting within gun range, I am checking my 6 constantly to see if his teammate is going to launch a missile at me, especially because if he's smart, I am going to be his priority target considering I'm right on his teammate's 6. Of course, you know, not considering all the people that are on him himself, but if he were going to be nice and try to find a way to help his teammate out, I would be the one that goes down first. So I got to check my 6 for a missile as much as I think of it. In between trying to get these gunshots in, I do see a missile, but it's not coming after me, so I know I am free to just finish this guy off, and my teammate also finishes off the other 4J, and that's the end of that game. Now, I absolutely despise these new Enduring Confrontation maps. I'll make a video about it, maybe, as to why I dislike them, why maybe they'll never be something I'll like, and probably why they'll never work the way that the community wants them to. That'd be its own video, it'd be its own rant, but for now we're just going to deal with the game at hand. I am at altitude once again. I'm getting more radar missiles spammed at me. Well, not spammed at me, it's only 1. I'm being dramatic. But that MLD does shoot an R24 at me, I believe, and I chaff it. I'm also keeping an eye out on that EJ, and I see that the MLD is kind of doing a 180 for me. I'm getting a little upset at this point by seeing that, so I'm just going to keep flying away. I'm Mach 1.5 at 10,000 meters. There's no way this guy is going to stay on me for any longer than 20 seconds, and he really doesn't. He's already pulling off, so now I'm thinking about what I want to do now to re-engage, and that's when I see the EJ Kai, for some reason, shooting an 8-kilometer cold E2 shot at me, which is honestly laughable, and I have no idea what I'm doing. He is in the elite squad of the European Canadian though, so I assume he probably knows better than I do. Now that I know nobody else is shooting missiles at me from 10 kilometers away, I'm going to turn around and re-engage. I still have all 4 of my PLs. I didn't take any shots at anybody in the opening part of the game. I was full defensive, and that honestly happens pretty often when I'm flying my Fierce E7, when I'm flying the J-8. If I'm doing the play style that I'm showing you right now, oftentimes, since you're the highest target, you will be the first one locked up on radar, and if you do not know how to evade incoming semi-active radar homing missiles, then I have a guide on that. I'll leave the card right here. Why don't you check that out, because you're going to need it if you're going to be flying like this. The MLD burns one of my PLs, but I do manage to clean them up with the guns. I'm going to try to lead this one really hard on this MiG-23. Like I said, these PLs just aren't going to pull real hard, and that's a perfect example. That 23 was flying nearly straight, but just that inertia I was giving that PL5 off of the rail was too much for it to adjust for and correct for, despite having maximum lead that I was able to give it. So, might want to take note of that when you're using the PL5s. It's pretty frustrating, but you're just going to have to make it work. Maybe do smarter missile launches than I do. And now I'm pretty much just focusing all my attention on this 23 because I know he's the only guy in the area, and I'm not worried about anybody sneaking up on me just because, well, I know that there's nobody around. I'm taking my time trying to line up the perfect shot because really, these 23mm, you can literally dodge them after watching them exit the barrel. They have pathetic muzzle velocity, and you can quite literally react to them coming out of the muzzle and defensive fly accordingly. So you kind of have to just anticipate where you think people are going to fly based off of their wing position and where you think they're going to roll and turn into. It's funny, I was saying I was all alone, but was I really? Because as I start to fly toward these other enemies, two people get spotted. So had they seen me or had they cared about me, maybe I could have died right there pretty easily. So in hindsight, probably not the smartest idea to focus all my attention and get slow on the MiG-23 like that. And that's what I was saying about in the last clip, where you have to be constantly doing 360s no matter what you're doing. And that's a perfect example right there where I messed that up. That was also a pretty ambitious missile launch on that FG with the PL. Had I had more altitude, had I been going faster, sure, maybe that could have hit, but with the current state I was launching that in, there's just no way. So I pretty much just wasted a missile there. I do see that my F-104G is going up against this ASA. I saw that the ASA is a console player, no offense console players, but I was pretty confident that my teammate would be able to deal with him just on that alone. Unfortunately, he ends up crashing into the ground. I don't know why, I'm not going to make fun of him for it, I wasn't there. But he does crash into the ground, which leaves me, I think 3 versus 1, but as of right now, 2 versus 1. So I want to kill this FG as quickly as I can before that ASA comes on back in. I don't know why the FG started bleeding speed and trying to turn fight me, but I'm a Delta, an extreme Delta at that, so I can just pretty much bleed speed, pull as much AOA as I want. If I really had to, I could pop the air brake and cut throttle combined, and like I said, bleed as much speed as I need to. I'm going to sit on the 6.7 FG all day. That is the most immaneuverable, besides the F-104s, that is the most immaneuverable fat top tier in the game. Now I'm 1 versus 1 with this ASA. I do know that there's another player left, but I haven't seen him, so I'm just going to assume I'm 1 versus 1, but I do need to keep an eye out just in case. I have 1 PL left, so I'm thinking I'm probably not going to catch up to him anyways, and is it really worth launching? Well, I'm going to need fuel, I'm going to need missiles, and I'm probably going to need some cannon ammo. So after a little mental argument with myself, I decided it's probably best just to save the missile just in case I run into that other guy on the way back to base. So I go ahead and rearm and refuel, get some more ammo, and here's the ASA. He's head on. I spot him at about 5 kilometers, which is absolutely pathetic. I knew the 9L was coming, so I kind of flared beforehand. I didn't even bother trying to line up a head-on shot because Vulcan far outranges my 23. By the time I actually had it aimed, there would have been shots already halfway toward my plane. So it was just best in that situation to flare and get out of dodge. Now, I do know that in the long run, I will probably start out pushing this guy up here at altitude, but he's got such a head start on me, I'm probably not going to catch him for a long time. So I do start shoving out the PL5s. We are at very high altitude. I'm getting at pretty high speeds, but I'm not quite the speed to be able to make a 4.5, 5 kilometer launch like I'm trying, so that was more to slow him down than anything. Did it really slow him down that much? Not really. But I have 4 PL5s and 2 planes left, as well as all 200 rounds of 23mm. So I was thinking, just why the hell not? It's worth a try. Now I'm going a little bit faster though. I've gotten even higher. My missile's going to perform better. It's going to have more range because it's going to be coming off of the rail at more speed, and the air up here is thinner, so it's going to be experiencing less drag to slow it down. This is 5.35 kilometers, which sounds absolutely nuts for a rear aspect shot with something like a short-range Fox 2, quote-unquote short range. But actually a lot of missiles could do something similar, not quite that far, but you know, your missile's range is drastically extended when you're going this fast at this high of altitude. He does flare, and the PL5, like I said, is rather susceptible to flares in comparison to other missiles, but if you're just going to leave your afterburner on and fly straight, then your flares aren't going to do jack diddly squat, and he ends up getting that PL5 shoved up his behind. I'm running out of time, and I do have a tickets disadvantage, which is bullshit in and of itself, but that's also another topic for another video. I am using this little last known location here on the map. If you guys don't know, the last person alive on a team will show a last known location, and it'll kind of just slowly update. The thing is, it's always behind. So I'm kind of anticipating him being a grid square ahead of where it's showing me, and what do you know, it ends up he is. It's an F4F, I am sneaking up on him, but any second now he ends up popping a blind hunt, so my surprise attack goes out the window, so immediately I just queue up PL5. I hope he doesn't see me just quite yet. I launch it. Unfortunately, he does see me, and he is going to flare that away. That would have probably hit him had he not been paying attention, but he maintains situational awareness, as he should when you're using your own blind hunt. But I am fully confident at this point I'm going to be able to kill him. He is an F4F, and it is a very maneuverable plane. However, I am 1 versus 1. I have better engine power, better thrust to weight. If I need to get my speed back, I'm going to be able to do so. I can always just flare away his missiles as I try to extend. I have better AOA, so I can pull inside of his turns, and if he's going to try to force an overshoot, which it turns out he does, fortunately for me, I'm prepared for it, because unfortunately for me, I had recently just gotten slammed by Chippy in this exact same scenario, and he made me overshoot. I went in front of his nose, and I died. So this time, I was a little bit more attentive to what was going on in front of me here. I notice he's bleeding speed, so I do some deltoing bullshit and cut my throttle, pop air brake, do a couple spinnies, and I have pretty much no speed, but it allows me to get the gunshot, and that ends the game and effectively this video. I do have a Discord, link is in the description down below for that. If you want to join, it's probably going to be capped off at a certain limit, so go ahead and join before that happens. J-8 is something new and refreshing for West Taiwan, so grind it if you want. J-70 is still top dog though, in my opinion. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one. I'll see you.